So, a few topics today. First of all, when we're in the blooming mode, we have to recognize that when we think of a seed pushing through the dirt to reach the light of day, or in other words, to break through, or not even at night, but just to break through that barrier, it takes a lot of pressure built up. If you've ever grown anything, you see they sometimes come out like they come in like pushing from their back up, like, and then they sort of could open up. It's not like a little tip of the leaf has enough power. So in journaling about this for myself, I remember I was like feeling like I had been underground for so long and finally arrived that I had to appreciate this real Shayna in her real Shayna suit, like whatever that means. As she emerges, only in the last 5 years did I start to emerge. I wrote this over a year ago, so like let's say 6 years. That's how I felt at the time I was writing it, that I'm the gardener, the self-parent of the whole plant. So parts of me could push out and parts of me are being protected, but just like as a part of me pushes down or appears to sink, and not, that's what we call roots, another part of me can push up and rise higher, that's the branches. And when I stress parts of the system, it can actually cause me to resist in that area. So let's say, you push your feet down, you can actually stick your head up taller. If you're sitting down, push your butt down, you can rise up taller. That's our roots to rise, right? It's this idea, roots to rise, and then stressing parts of the system. So if something pushes me here, I'm going to push back. And I'm actually growing taller in that direction, if you think about it. Something pushes you here, you actually push back. You grow taller in that direction. Those things go away. You're now taller in both sides, right? So this idea that we resist in those areas, actually the pushback gives us more potential, and eventually our actual self over there in that area takes up that space, conquering this possibility as a becoming. Or obviously, it can cause us to retreat inward, repress, causes a lot, sometimes too much internal pressure, which we each have different ways of managing. I felt that I had been overeating in order to numb or kind of restrain the experience. And when we're thinking about blooming, also it's this getting the outside perspective to represent the underrepresented parts of ourselves. So like it's the leaves that might need to get the sunshine energy, which is the food of the tree, for the whole tree. Then I wanted to talk about self-care skills that I learned in this group called Interplay. Interplay, I've mentioned in previous times, is a program online, really, or a community online where we play. We, instead of calling everything work, practice, we call it play. So we learn to play with the energy that we have in certain situations, and finding ways to be less serious and more comfortable, more ease, more grace, almost like in a dance with life. And the group that I went to was targeted towards caregivers, caretakers, and because of the particular vulnerability to burnout. And we learned, and the facilitators were Sheila Collins, Gautreaux, and they used to base the material, even though it used many Interplay, because Interplay form itself, like, even though it used many of the modalities from Interplay, they also based a lot of material on the book that Sheila Collins wrote called StillPoint. So first of all, we do sorting work. What is me? What is you? What is what? Number 2, a skill is letting go and surrendering. This could be letting go and surrender, letting go of plans, directions, or outcomes, surrendering plans, directions, or outcomes. 3 is building and using partnership power. This is how, when we have a bigger perspective and a bigger skill set and a bigger strength, we call it partnership power, when people come together. 4 is stepping back. In this way, we could see more, we open, we can close. And 5 is saying no. Saying no is staying true. It's called integrity, boundaries. We'll call it exercising choice. And then we went in and thought about what are some that we each have. So for me, it was conscious consumption. This is related to food, media, people, activities, physical space to move freely, where I'm not observed, where I can experience rather than feel seen, and then see myself from the outside eyes, but versus seeing myself straight from my own eyes. Sunlight, not just brightness, but also heat, which is different than electricity. You might say that candlelight has more in common with the sunlight than electricity has even though they replaced kind of the candles and the fires that we used. Putting time in, so this is called investing or managing, budgeting time, to preparing meals, cooking, for everything from choosing the ingredients to planning the meals in advance to being creative about what I'm eating or how to go about organizing the plate itself, going to sleep when I'm tired and doing more tomorrow, whatever will be, tomorrow will be, receiving guidance from wise people. In other words, what am I gauging wisdom from is if they're experienced in that area where I want to learn. And then, so it's not just smartness, it's wisdom. It's knowing how to apply, but it's clarity. It's knowing how to apply the wisdom, the smarts. And then seeing how strong I was after I gained 60 pounds that year, how the physical weight gave me power, because just lifting myself up, moving, becoming so strong, just doing all those things was me becoming so strong. Walking up the stairs with that weight on me was more of an exercise than just walking up the stairs without that weight on me. And finally, the third topic today is how I got in a fight with someone. I said some things while angry. So we can see here that when we're blooming, we might bloom out of these old patterns where we're underground. And it caring for ourselves, like thinking of a plant, it needs water, sunlight, fresh air, all these kind of things. So these are the things that I had buried under in me. I said these when I'm angry, that I hate his voice, and whatever he gives, he takes much more, that he's an ignoramus, illiterate, idiot, fool, that I want to be free of him, he's a burden on my life, and he's always trying to argue and challenge and oppose and undermine and invalidate me and trap me with words, and he's disrespectful and dishonest, and whatever energy, time, or attention I give, he uses it against me, and that I don't want to talk to him or deal with him or be around him, and that it's not commensalism, which is where there's no effect, or symbiosis, where both benefit, but that it feels like he's a parasite. And leaning from this topic, we have to talk about energy reserves. So it's really a separate topic, but I'm including it because this idea that I was thinking that in connection with him, I could get my energy reserves built up, but I couldn't. So I want to explore this a little bit. So first of all, the truth is that sometimes you have different kinds of energy. You have fire energy, water energy. Fire and water are different. Maybe he's fire and I'm water, right? Fire needs a wick, so it does need something to burn off of. Like, it could be he was using me like a wick, and I'm like, but I'm water, don't burn me up. Like, you know, the fire needs to get stuck. It needs roots. It needs to stay. It stays on something, while water reaches out and sort of depersonalizes, decentralizes, deplaces itself. It flows and drifts and spreads. So thinking of my soul wanting to fly away, so my body gained a lot of weight. It was sort of like my body became this anchor to hold me so I didn't leave it behind. I could say, how could I relate to the other by finding the sameness, is that maybe he's like a fire, but I'm also, could relate that my body being the wick, and then I'm like, my soul is like a fire. And then also this watery thing, that I used to like travel, adventure, explore, discover, wander. I wanted to just be free and sort of drift in and out of everything. But my soul body relationship required me to, like, this past year especially. So I wrote this like a year ago. So like a year before this past year, the year before that, going inward instead of outward. So sort of like the water seeping into that inner soil rather than on the out, to nurture that inner life rather than the outer life. So in a way, we could just say, okay, we could give him innocence, that all these things I felt was me not accepting my own fire, or looking to him for my energy reserves. So let's talk about energy reserves. So let's talk about examples of things that build potential energy. Cooking or art, reframing things, self-control, self-humbling, being peaceful, being in nature, time in nature, exercise, big goals and endeavors and purpose and mission. It could be abstinence or celibacy. This builds up energy that would be lost in certain activities. Singing, dancing, holding back judgment, patience and waiting, fasting from food or from speech, and pushing the comfort zone. Pushing the comfort zone a little further, we could get more energy from more things that we didn't used to be able to get from. Plus, when we build resistance to losing energy or from short-circuiting, we could build energy. It's like an inside-out way. So we could actually build resistance to losing energy. We could sort of like make some sections more waterproof or more like leak-proof, drip-proof. So all of these things I mentioned need something called activation energy. It's a beginning energy. It's energy that allows us to start. It's called activation energy. You need to have a little bit of energy in order to start the process of having a reserve. You need to have a little bit of energy to get the gas to then bring it into the bigger vessel. The gas being, what I mean is the fuel. You need to get a little bit of, you need to have enough energy to get what you need from this activity, to do the activity. So let's say you get this thing when you run up the hill. You have to have enough energy to run up the hill to get all the energy at the top of the hill. So let's say, let's talk about a sneakier way people can get energy. Some people call these people energy vampires, stealers, robbers, parasites, who will take whatever they can get if it's a one-time thing. So they'll rob the person of all the energy. So let's think of energy now as a currency, as like gold or silver, money, food, something precious, cars, bikes, right? Whatever it is. So someone wants the energy, so they're a stealer of energy. So they take energy, and they believe it's like a one-time thing, so they just take whatever they could get. They're like robbing everyone, like people say robbing blind. It's hard to use that for this. Let's say they just rob without thinking, they just rob everything. If there's a large reserve to access only once before setting off the security alarms, we would call it the same thing. If somebody will let this person in and trust them, and then if they would do anything wrong, this person's alarms would go off and they would have no more access to stealing energy. They wouldn't be able to access them again. So you do it in like a one-time way. You grab whatever you could get. God forbid, I'm just saying this, we're understanding how energy vampires work. So energy vampire has two different modalities. First modality here is grab everything as soon as you get the opportunity. It's a one-time thing. You know you're not going to have access to this person again. It's an invisible spiritual crime. And you're going to, obviously the same way a robber gets punished eventually, an energy robber also gets punished eventually. We could talk about that in different ways, but here straightforwardly, it's not a victimless crime just because there's no video footage, right? Although there could be, like you could have ways where energy stealing also correlates with manifestation in the physical world of stealing or of harassment or violation. But here we're talking about how this parasite is sort of like getting access now. There's a free pass. They take whatever they could get. If it's a large reserve, where they might set off the energy, like let's say someone had a lot of diamonds and someone's allowed in there. If they would steal diamonds, they would set off the alarms. They would never be allowed in. Nobody would be allowed in. So they take advantage of whatever they could that one time. The second way is a steady supply, as long as they could siphon invisibly undetected, so they can maintain the energy resource. For example, they skim a little off the bank accounts all the time. They skim a little bit from their manager. They use the company card for things they're not supposed to. In both cases, number one, grabbing everything they could. Number two, skimming, siphoning a little bit here or there. In both cases, they have to take the good with the bad. So, in other words, they take a lot of the energy reserve, but some of that energy we could call bad or good. It's the positive, the negative, the blessing, the curse, the desirable, the undesirable. It's not glamorous, if we really think about it, to have to consume the usable along with the waste. So someone has a big energy reserve, and it's not all pure energy. It could be crude, it could be unrefined, it could be there's good and bad mixed together. So it could be that the person has their own portion, it's good for them, but for someone else it wouldn't be all good because they didn't earn that energy. It doesn't belong to them, it doesn't match their shape, their form, their true self. Because they need to take rather than generate their own energy. So they can't build up those reserves on their own. It's not glamorous at all. They literally have to be like a leech, like a parasite, like a sponge. And so something must be blocking their ability to connect to the source of vitality directly. We're calling here now energy vitality. They're not able to tap into where we get. Remember, I listed all those examples of ways to build potential energy. So this person doesn't, or this being doesn't have a connection to the source of vitality. Now let's talk about a depleted person, somebody who's just robbed. Oh, and I want to say these energy vampires, these robbers, stealers, we have to remember, they, if necessary, they wear a mask, even that they're a victim, so that they could get into the guarded places without being seen as a threat, so they could have access. So a depleted person, somebody who's now been robbed, can re-energize, because even though their hard work was thieved, the machinery, the technology, in other words, their muscle memory, their habits are there. And they can responsibly replenish and spiritually recultivate the storages. So it's like somebody who's jogs every morning. They use, let's say, 50% of that energy for the day, and the 50% they store up in their muscles, right? So somebody has a way to rob 50%. They still have like the ability to run every day and get somebody steals their 50% of their energy reserves, and now they know that the very next day they're going to be able to access again. They know how to do it. They have the technology, they have the muscle memory, they have the habits, versus the person who's stealing does not have the ability to run that amount every day and generate that energy. And we could use any example of this. The person who is able to connect to the source of energy and has the activation energy, even though they're depleted, they could still restock. Now, they recultivate, they're responsible, versus the one who sucks dry is a de-energizer, attacker, and therefore it doesn't have the secondary benefit. So there's not just the benefit of the actual energy reserves themselves, there's the benefit of having built up ability to keep on generating energy. This the self-sufficiency, the tools that have been developed, the skills from the entire process of transforming energy, condensing it, creating backup vessels, etc. So all this that has been done, this whole system that a person creates within their own circuitry with all this energy reserves available, and then like making zip files of it so it doesn't take up space, so that it's like potent, pure. That's what we do for ourselves. These battery packs of energy within ourselves, we could do that for ourselves. It's the highest level of self-care. So we have this ability, even though it gets emptied, we can easily replenish our system. Not easily, it does take energy, but we could replenish it. Versus while the parasite grows stronger, we have to remember the host becomes weaker. So this parasite will go find a new host if it kills its host. It's like a virus, right? So we just have to detect whether it's safe to be vulnerable or if it will leave one defenseless to do so to an attack. So how can we protect ourselves? In other words, what am I saying here? So first we finish up this topic that we just did, which is that we if we are of the category, by the way, I am doing 2 videos in one today. I'm doing one for Sunday, one for Monday. So if we are the able to replenish more easily, we're definitely not in the same boat as a parasite. We do not have to become a parasite. We don't have to become good at being an energy vampire. We have already become good at generating energy for ourselves. So, and we can choose to share it, but there's always an energy exchange. When we fill up with energy, we can share some of it. We can make bargains with people. So maybe we have some energy in this form. Like I said earlier, each person's energy matches their own experience. When we depend on others for energy, we're not getting pure energy for us. We're getting what will be a mixture of negative, positive, desirable, undesirable, blessing and curse, and so on. So basically good and bad mixed together. But then we talked about now the nature of a parasite is that it is not looking out for its host. Some parasites want their host to survive so that they could continue to survive. However, a parasite will find a new host. People are familiar with that pattern with viruses. So how do you detect whether it's safe to be vulnerable? How do you know? Because this could kill. If the parasite comes in and then gets stronger and stronger, the host gets weaker and weaker. It would leave one defenseless to an attack. So it's important to keep some aspects completely off limits to anyone, so that in case of a predator who takes what it can get when it can, in case they come and they're going to rob everything at the moment that they're able, that they have access, full security clearance. So it'll be possible to then still have some secret stash. Always keep a secret stash between you and God, you and you. Not only that you can get up and retaliate, which is important to remember. You want to be able to get up. If somebody's trying to corner you, pin you down, you need to have a secret stash that's enough for you to get up and retaliate, even wound them or scar them, so that they can't hide the truth from the potential prey anymore. So you could be noble. You could say, I'm going to save enough energy for myself to do spiritual warfare. Not only will I handle the energy vampires, where I'll keep a secret stash for myself, where I won't share with anyone, so that if I get robbed, I'll always have this secret stash. but I'll also keep enough in that secret stash and make sure that it's replenished, so that if anyone ever dares to be an energy vampire, not only will I be able to, they'll think they robbed me, but not only will I do this, getting up and fighting back, getting them also, but exposing them, wounding them, scarring them, so that they'll now be exposed as an energy vampire, so that they won't be able to do this to anyone else. And on top of that, we can have enough energy saved up in this stash that can be used as activation energy. Now, the last thing that I want to share, which is very sad, I went through this myself. You hear in my voice, I have a richness, I have a quality here, right? This is like, we would say the voice comes from the energy of a person, right? Our energy really comes through in our voice, our sound. So the quality of the voice, actually, unfortunately, is a display of, not unfortunately. So what I'm saying is that since the voice displays power and energy of the person, the vitality, after someone has been depleted and attacked, you might hear in their voice, the person might experience in their voice a hollowness, a shallowness, where the resonance, the depth, the reverberation is not the way it used to be. But you could return, you could come back. And more importantly, you could now understand how much you could expect from another person depending on how their voice sounds. And we could hear it. Does their voice sound weak? Does their voice sound shallow or hollow? And I don't mean fake. I mean literally the quality of the voice, the sound, the cadence, not the cadence, the pitch, no, the reverberation, the resonance of the richness of the voice. So we'll stop here. This is going to be a 2-part video in one, because it takes a lot of energy to break through the soil, to bloom. And next topic will be related to being humble, which comes after we've become, which is a very clear next step for this kind of learning. So all the best. I will, God willing, connect with you again on Tuesday with another video. The topic will be on humility. Bye-bye.